Oh, Wargreymon, what happened to you? You showed so much potential in BT11. You were the most popular deck due to the powerful card of Greymon X. You grew more powerful with the inclusion of BT12 metalgreymon. But after restrictions, you've made seldom appearances in BT13, EX4, and only had some minor changes in BT14, and then a few tops here and there with EX5 and BT15. But now with BT16 and beyond, Greymon might see some resurgence with BT17. But until then, what can players do? Today's deck profile looks at the strategies and changes to make for the current meta with the favorites of Numemon and Magnamon X on the line. Without further ado, let's just dive right into it. As always, this deck is going to run between 4 and 5 eggs. 4 BT5 Coromons for the draw power, or the BT9 Coromon for the extra plus 1000 DP on your turn. Nothing too crazy considering at times you'll want the draw power more than the DP, and other times the DP kind of matters. Another consideration and thought was utilizing BT12 Digimon for the extra DP based deletion effects that come with only certain Digimon, but my issue with that is that you're going to hurt yourself when digivolving to the BT12 Agumon, who can only digivolve from a black level 2, unless it's Coromon named. As for other Coromons, Agumon X becomes another limiting factor for the fact that it can only digivolve off of a red level 2. But moving to level 3s, it's the same old drill of Agumon X, BT14 Agumon, and BT12 Agumon. The Agumon X and BT12 Agumon both have search capabilities, while the BT14 Agumon does the heavy lifting with being promoted out of the rays and digivolving into a Greymon if you have tie in play. But beware, Digimon Emperor can be absolutely obnoxious in this regard. Other substitutions for this lineup would be Gatsumon to stop your opponent from playing Digimon. But remember, with the use of BT12 Greymon, this locks you out of being able to digivolve into a smooth transition. In some previous lists that I have seen in recent tops, Gatsumon is typically a one-of. I briefly looked at testing Black Agumon X's and also Black Agumons from the starter deck, but overall ran into color cross issues again, that could typically streamline you more towards that color. And overall, I wasn't a fan. Greymon-wise, you have to run at least 1 copy of BT11 Greymon X and 4 copies of Greymon from BT5. With the ability of BT14 Agumon, you can digivolve into BT5 Greymons for free and net 1 memory if you have that Tai Kamiya in play. But for the last 4 to 5 slots, it's ultimately up to you whether you want to go 2 or 3 Greymon X's from BT9, or 2 or 3 copies of BT12 Greymon to play Tai Kamiya for free if you do not have him in play. Needless to say, protection seems to be not as useful considering there are so many ways to now target the specific protection source. But the level 5s is where I've adjusted it significantly after some playtesting, and honestly think this is the meta call. With metalgreymon from BT12, this Digimon can raid and play a tamer. But if you have an inkling that your opponent is going to play down that Edamon from EX5, where you're going to be forced to attack and have a little DP reduction, when you attack you'll want to make sure you've worked out the math, because in some instances, you might just be able to counterattack when you go into metalgreymon X. Because when you use x-antibody to climb into this specific Digimon, if they Valkyriemon Ace, no additional DP reductions will occur, and the original DP status effects will also disappear. While true you could utilize BT9 metalgreymon X, the fact is with so many security problems, trashing security feels a lot safer. And finally with the level 6s, I do a split between Raid Wargreymon and Blackwargreymon X for the fact that Blackwargreymon X can definitely deal with Magnamon X in some instances, depending on how many ties you have set up for the redirect. The purpose of these top ends is to allow redirects with the attacks and big DP bonuses. But for level 7s, it's always a simple 1-in-1 of Blitz Omnimon and Omnimon X for the trashing of security. If you can clear 4 security and then pull off Omnimon X for game, more power to ya. Option card wise, I had long gone over the fact that offense training can bottom deck those tamers, but personally I haven't found a way to make it work in an all red variant or an all black variant. There's just elements of both that you'll need. BT9 x-antibody is going to work wonders for you, especially if your opponent is pulling off the Edamon combo. But on the bright side, if you do happen to have metalgreymon X in hand, no problem. You're almost safe from anything. But the last option card of course has shifted from typical cards like Trident Gaia and Red Memory Boost to a non-red card, Ultimate Flare. After a lot of testing and just thinking about in general what are the best option cards for the format, it's true that Crimson Blaze can handle Numemon very well. But you know what it doesn't handle? Magnamon X. When you look at overall option cards that have more broad spectrum application, Magnamon X and Imperial Dramon can kind of dodge Crimson Blaze in niche situations. And do keep in mind that in the text on Ultimate Flare, it does state trash up to 3, meaning you could stop at a level 3 and then just annihilate the whole stack, but regardless you're going to have to stop at 3. But this is where the build honestly gets tricky because your offense trainings definitely bottom deck more cards now than in previous builds. On the downside, this could also give some freedoms to other decks who don't necessarily ever have those 3 play costs to delete, like Fenrir Lugumon when they go wide, or even the Force Sovereign. Finally, your Tamers are simply 2 Tai Kamiyas from the starter deck, and 2 Tai Kamiyas from BT12. Need extra draw power and DP? Starter deck 15 Tai Kamiya has you covered. Need blocker and a little bit of a buff? BT12 Tai Kamiya has you covered. But in testing, the over-aggression red variant just wasn't cutting it anymore. And while yes, you could ship more damage in certain matchups with BT1 Tai Kamiya, sometimes you didn't have the DP threshold to get over others, and that in itself became a problem. Generally, I'm not going to harp too much on the matchups and changes because Greymon will always be a fan favorite, and some players will always play it. And although it's not going to be seen in droves like it was 2 years ago, you have to admit, sometimes players will still try. What are your thoughts on Greymon, and is it an option you're considering for Peoria next week? Following this event, I'll begin testing some EX6 concepts that I have in mind. But until then, I do want to show some decks that could be played at this event for your preparation. This is DIGI-PANDA, logging out.